Hello, I'm Ju, your instructor for this class, delving into concept art and illustration. I've been freelancing for about 2 years and am also working full-time as a game artist in Australia. Previously, I was a graduate of architecture with a focus on arcology, which is basically architecture design for dystopian or apocalyptic environments. You might see a lot of my environment work on ArtStation or on my other portfolio sites is heavily inspired by Art Deco aesthetics and heavy monumental architecture. I am also a mentor within the ABP, Architecture, Building and Planning industry, supporting students to achieving their goals and desired career, should they wish to change their direction even after spending years being in a different line of work to what they want to pursue. As a game artist now, we are required to design and draw mostly 2D art for characters, backgrounds, UI, or user interface and props. We're able to work with a variety of illustration types as well, like book covers and loading screens, and sometimes other things like emotes and merch too. So let's move on to talk about the class. The program this class will use is primarily Clip Studio Paint, but if you have other programs like Procreate on iPad, Photoshop, SAI, and such, I will try to explain it in a way that suits the majority of programs. Some functions are only available in Clip Studio, but there are workarounds to achieve the same result, and I'll make sure to point it out. Here is an alternative list of programs that I know can be compatible with the class workarounds, shortcuts, and all. Photoshop, SAI, Procreate, Medibang, and Krita. And for Clip Studio's 3D modeling rig, if you don't have Clip Studio Paint, you can use Magic Poser. It's free on the web version. The class does simulate a similar production workflow to what I do in the industry, like restricted timelines, juggling several tasks, moving from direct concept to illustration, and etc. Let me share about learning philosophies to help prepare you for the class topics. In general, when it comes to learning, I think it's important to be mindful about the subject matter and to practice applying anything you learn. Sometimes it's nice to draw without focus, and I've done this too when relaxing. But when it comes to learning, you might want to be attentive and intentional in order to make the most of it. So in order to keep things as condensed and efficient as possible for you, the classes will run in a lecture seminar type where we will have some time at the start of each class to go through some theory, and afterward we will run through ways to apply that knowledge. I will provide the lecture notes as part of the perks too, so that it is convenient for you and you don't have to write your own notes, unless you want to. As an illustrator, we often have to adapt to a variety of styles, some styles being so different that it doesn't even look like what we do for our own personal work, and that is why it's important to be attentive. So this here is a very simplified process timeline, which we will go into more detail and expand more on during the class. Firstly, composition, which is the pre-planning stage, moving on to output, which is the production stage, and then turning out the result, which is the outcome. It also encapsulates mental and physical learning, which includes the technicalities of it versus muscle memory, both of which are very important to our craft. Because the class is divided into 2 topics, the first stage will focus on concepting, designing, and basic fundamentals to help you. This is like theory. The second stage, illustration, will focus on application, taking the skill sets from the theory stage and applying it. Of course, there are subset categories as well. So for this first stage, concept, which is theory, we'll go through basic fundamentals. I will try my best to make this fun and easy, and volumetric, going through volumetric shape, form design, planning ideas. Also ideation, which is really important to get your design intent across to clients, especially if you're working for the commercial market. Usually for concepting, it doesn't have to be as refined as a marketing illustration, but details still have to have enough visual clarity to get the design objective across. This applies for characters, environments, props, and almost anything really. The second stage of the class, which is mostly on illustration and the application of all the theory from the first stage, will focus on composition, lighting, mood, storytelling, designing the intent into something new. Other types of illustrations for physical goods will also be explored, such as merchandise. In this stage, I will go more in depth on lighting setup, which is a vital part of the composition when telling a story through your illustrations. Detailing and post-process approaches and techniques will also be explored on. We will also go through tips, tricks, methodical processes throughout the entire course to reduce guesswork when you're creating your own characters. Now, a topic of introduction, developing style. You can think of what you like in illustrations, like how a face looks and what you like to draw. All these will be really helpful into factoring how you develop your own style, and also train you to quickly recognize the appealing parts of other people's works and styles and apply it to your own drawing if you one day have to draw in that style for work. Is there any shame in copying someone's style? The short answer is no, and the long answer is still no. But in such a competitive industry where many styles are explored, you'll probably eventually develop and specialize in your own style anyway, but also have to do other styles for clients. So in a sense, you might end up with many styles and techniques under your belt. There's no shame in learning from others because the way one person draws will never be the exact same as how another person does it. It might look very similar, but ultimately, humans are unique. Even the way we hold our pens will never be pixel perfect to how the person besides us hold it. Another thing that younger artists and students of this day and age might be worried about is the topic of AI. Now, AI might be an uncomfortable topic, but I think it's important to address it during the time of this class creation. And I hope I can ease some people's worries about it here. I'll address it because it seems to be a demotivating factor for many young artists or artists who are just beginning their journey. So AI art has had quite a recent boom. I'll be direct, I think it's something we'll have to coexist with. Currently, the legalities behind AI for art is very unregulated, so I don't advise using it for your own learning or even for making profit. And I warn you that there will be legal troubles. So that's the logical side of things. Now, as how it can affect artists directly, I'm going to speak from a practical perspective and no personal emotions involved at this present. From my experience now, going from being scared as a beginner to present day, I don't think it will affect commercial artists much. I mean, the barrier for entry to the industry is already still as competitive as before, and not much has changed. I'll use the food industry, another competitive trade, as an example. I've seen relatives dive into cafe businesses and Thai cuisines in separate countries, and it was quite hit and miss for them. AI art right now is more like fast food, right? Some people will like it because it looks pretty and they want it done fast. It's not necessarily low quality, but it is like an extra art option for the general market, just like how fast food is. Some people will want fast food every day, or maybe they can only afford fast food. We don't know their situation, but there will be times when they can afford it, or might want some other cuisine or cafe food instead, and vice versa. Some people who eat luxury food every day might want fast food on certain days. It doesn't mean just because a new food chain is available suddenly means other cuisine goes out of business. I think it's in human nature to want to experience a variety of things, and new things always pique interest for a while until it stabilizes to equal levels. I think of AI art as the same. We might have to coexist with it, but it really shouldn't be any worry as to how it affects the industry in terms of job numbers. As for legalities, I'm not equipped to say anything on that. That's up to different country laws and lawyers. Again, I hope it eases some worries. Keep creating and do what you love. The game art industry is still pretty much challenging and still pretty much the same before, regardless of AI. Getting back on track with the course now. I'd like you to think about what you're good at and what you'd like to work on. Strengths may be something you really like, so you are inclined to draw that more often. Areas to improve on might be things you don't like drawing often. Like, currently, I'm putting effort to draw more guys in my personal time because I find them hard to draw, whereas I'm more comfortable drawing women. Also, if it's general fundamentals, I believe every artist needs to keep a fundamental fire going, and this is something that has to be practiced for life. Some beginner artists might think, I can master anatomy once. But to sharpen your skills and keep growing, it has to keep going. And this is just part of the art life grind. That's why it's kind of like a game too. Try to grind and level up, gain experience points and such. Fundamentals feel like tutorial EXP drills, and more fun stuff like design and illustration can feel like quests with rewards and loot. I'll introduce relaxing or fun ways to practice fundamentals that you can kind of do in any location as long as you have pen and paper. So after this introduction, I'd like you to think and consider what you're good at, what you want to improve on, and make a small list for yourself of 3 to 5 things you want to prioritize during the course of this class in order to make the most of it. It can be anything from specific things you want to do to general goals. I can start the list as an example. A. Designing a single appealing character with less visual distractions. B. Practice gesture and poses. C. Get better at defining lighting in my illustrations. D. Be able to pair and be more harmonic about colors. As we can see here, we have a mix of broad and more specific goals. I'd also like to quickly go over my current workspace, as it might be quite different to many people's. I tend to work with a lot of my shortcut keys being customized, and they are mostly concentrated on the left side of the keyboard. So here we have where I put all my brushes and all the panels on the left, just because it's easier to access. And on the very far right would be layers, maybe adjustments, windows in Photoshop, things that are easy to access, and to make sure everything is categorized in one place. I will also show my shortcuts over here. Please don't feel obligated to copy the exact same shortcuts because they can be a bit strange compared to the default. But if you would like to cross that learning curve and customize your own shortcuts, these are all situated on the left side of the keyboard as I'm right-handed. You can follow it if you would like. With pen being N, pencil being C, only for the major tools. I don't make shortcuts for the minor tools. B for brush, V for airbrush, E eraser, S for blend or smudge in Photoshop, G for fill, no gradient, because I usually don't use gradient layers, W for magic wand, I or Alt for eyedropper, if you are on Windows, T for text, U for frame border, or making a shape, R for the ruler, and J for liquify. And here is the overall chart from this introduction. It might look like a lot of big topics to cover, but I promise it's gonna be okay. See you soon!